Okay, so what did we go over last week? Easter stuff. Anybody remember any highlights from Easter stuff? What? The quiz. Yes. And what's that?
Easter eggs.
What about them?
Chocolate bunny and Germany and Poland.
Yeah, somebody got really excited about the Poland thing having the most Easter eggs. We won't mention any names. That's right. What's that? Yeah, it was something like that. I don't remember. I'm sorry. I don't tend to store that kind of information. There's only limited space on my hard drive. It might have been. Yeah, we did have some sort of conversation about that. Okay. We're going to get back to John this week, specifically John chapter 5, and we're going to read down to verse 18. And I don't think I have my glasses. I know. That's a plus. Okay, so here we go. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool in Aramaic called Bethsaida, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am going, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, take up your bed, and walk." And at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and walked. Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath, and it is not lawful for you to take up your bed." But he answered them, "The man who healed me, the man said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Take up your bed and walk'?" Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, as there was a crowd in that place. Afterwards, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had healed him. This is why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered them, "My Father has been working until now, and I am working." This was why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. Now you remember that the last time we went over this, we were talking about Sabbath and Christian relationship to the Sabbath, because we were talking about whether the Jews were correct in their application of the Old Testament law about the Sabbath in relation to the man carrying his mat. Anybody this ringing a bell? Okay, so the man picked up his mat and he was carrying it on the Sabbath. And the Pharisees particularly, the Jewish people in general, were very particular. This is one of the very defining characteristics of the Jews, being an ordinance put in place by God. It is the 4th commandment. You remember we did this thing? And that was not slapping your kids. That's the 5th commandment. It's the 4th one. You shall rest. And so we looked at that, and it is an ordinance that comes from, obviously, the 7 days of creation. God rested on the 7th day. And we talked about the fact that God takes it very seriously. In Numbers 15, it talks about the man who collected sticks on the Sabbath, and he was brought before Moses, and Moses inquired of the Lord, and the Lord said, stone the man to death, you and all the Israelites, gather up stones and stone this man to death. So this is not a frivolous kind of observance. The Sabbath was a very serious issue for the Jews. And so in the Gospels, we see this conflict repeated over and over again between the Jews and Jesus in relation to Sabbath observation. Because it is an extremely important thing, because on the one hand, Jesus is very, very, very clear that it is important to observe Old Testament law. He came to fulfill the law, but he says anybody who says that you don't have to keep the law, they're the least in the kingdom of heaven. You remember that passage, right? That he did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. And so it's very important that we remember who Jesus is. And this is one of the things, what is going on? What's that? You're right. That's me. No blowing. Stand back. Wow, that thing's sensitive. Anyways, sorry about that. I thought somebody was banging somewhere. Anyways, so where was I? Okay, observation of Old Testament law. Right. So it is important for the Jewish people that they observe the Old Testament law. And, that's where I was going. Okay, so in history, there came a split that people wanted to put forward that was an artificial split between the Father and the Son in terms of the Trinity, right? If they admitted that there was a Trinity at all. And Marcion, who is Marcion? Yeah, he's a dead guy. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so he was a heretic. And he did not like the God of the Old Testament. So he separated out the Trinity and said the God of the Old Testament was a big, mean, nasty, horrible individual who instituted these terrible laws and then took out vengeance on people. And then there was nice, kind, loving Jesus. And Jesus is all about love and embracing and happiness and getting together and tolerance and all that. That's Jesus. And then there's the evil God of the Old Testament who was all about wrath and anger and meanness, right? And sometimes we get that attitude. Sometimes we actually adopt that kind of attitude that there is this big change from God from Old Testament to New Testament. And so we look at Jesus, and Jesus is all lovey-dovey, and God of the Old Testament is all mean and nasty. But Jesus is God. And there is a continuity. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The Godhead is the same in the Old Testament and the New Testament. I, the Lord, do not change. Right? And so we have to remember when you're interpreting the scriptures, you have to understand that there is this continuity. And so the Sabbath regulation existed in the time of Christ, and the Sabbath regulation exists after the time of Christ. But the application of the Sabbath regulation and the understanding of the Sabbath regulation is what is important for us. And Jesus makes it clear that the problem of the Pharisees' application of the Sabbath regulation was what? What was the problem with their application? Legalism, right? So it was a worship of the Sabbath, not a worship on the Sabbath, right? Do you understand? That the Sabbath regulation was the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And so their application of the Sabbath was in accordance with this legalistic, it is just one of these things that we must keep in order to attain salvation, right? Attain favor with God. But what also was one of their problems in this legalistic application, and we're going to get into how we can fall into the same trap this morning. What was the problem in this legalistic application? What's that? Well, that's also true, that you could not possibly keep the Sabbath regulation. Henrik?
I'm not sure if you're getting to that, but I remember reading they had clearly to the T defined what is work, which basically is more or less if you drink more than one sip at a time, that would be lifting too much, meaning you're working. And so they had down to a T what was considered work and what wasn't work. So they, I don't know how to make that point, but that's the description of the point.
Yep. Yeah. They went beyond what is written, right? The prohibition was to do no regular work on the Sabbath day, and they went beyond so that if you remember that the whole thing about the chicken and the egg, not which came first, but if a chicken laid an egg on the Sabbath, you could eat the egg as long as you killed the chicken for working on the Sabbath, right? That kind of ridiculousness. I think that's probably apocryphal, but anyways, the thing is that if we remember from, and now I got to find it because I lost it. I probably am just going to paraphrase in. Where he talks about the fact that you've neglected the weightier matters of the law, right? So he talks about, I have that, and that's going to bug me if I can't find it. So you're just going to have to be patient. Here we go. Yeah, Matthew 23, 23, and 24. Thank you. Okay, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, for you tithe the mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier provisions of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. But these are things that you should have done without neglecting the others. You blind guides who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Now, one of the things I wanted you to know about that I thought was interesting is that when Jesus quotes this to them, he says, for you tithe mint, dill, and cumin, have neglected the weightier provisions of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. That is right out of Micah chapter 6. Why? What's your favorite verse, Dad? And it says, what does God require of you, O man? To do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And Jesus says you have neglected the weightier provisions of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. Right? So he points that out to them that they are not keeping the Old Testament spirit of the law, that they have neglected these things. But you remember that both a gnat and a camel are both unclean, and they were both prohibited. So both of those things, they were supposed to keep those regulations, but it was more important because there is a hierarchy of sin that you must be aware of. All sin is an offense to God, but there are weightier sins than other sins. All sins are not equal, and that's important for you to remember also. So this matter of neglecting justice, mercy, and faithfulness is weightier than the strict legalistic application of the law. Capiche? So the heart of every issue is? The issue of the heart. It is a matter of what we do in the motive of our heart in relationship to God. And so this is where the Pharisees are falling down in this matter, is they don't care that the guy got healed. They don't care who healed. They care who said, take up your mat, because that's a violation of the law, but they don't care that the guy got healed. So they're not worried about justice, mercy, And faithfulness to God, because what are the two commandments that sum up the law and the prophets? Right. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And the second is related to the first. And if the Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath, and the man's been healed on the Sabbath, and that is mercy to your neighbor, then what is the weightier matter of the law? The weightier matter of the law is that this man has been healed, and the Lord of the Sabbath has told him to pick up his mat and walk. And that was the key. Now, in relation to us and our relationship to the Sabbath, I think we touched on this. So if the Sabbath is a creation kind of ordinance, it is a part of the moral law, then we talked on what is the Christian relationship to the Sabbath. That was a question, not a statement. We are now resting in Jesus. Okay, so one of the things is that if you have any interaction with the Seventh-day Adventists, we talked about this, is the Seventh-day Adventists say that the Sunday worship was instituted by Emperor Constantine. It's a pagan practice, and in reality, we should still be worshiping on the seventh day, not the first day. And so any violation of that is sin. Right? It is a sin to gather together and observe Sunday worship, according to the Seventh-day Adventist tradition. Are they correct? Because I've read lots of their literature. Are they correct? And if not, why? You can't answer, Guy. All right, so we do have Paul's instructions in regards to that, and it is in Romans, right? One person regards one day above another, and another regards every day alike. Each person must be fully convinced in his own mind. And of course, you've given it tremendous thought, and you are fully convinced in your own mind, right? What's that? Yeah, there we go. Okay, Colossians 2:16 and 17. Therefore, no one is to act as your judge in regard to food or drink or in respect to a festival or a new moon or a Sabbath day, things which are mere shadow of what is to come, but the substance belongs to Christ. Okay, so what is the definitive text? Like, those are two applicable texts that let us know that we come to the understanding that this Sabbath regulation is different for us. We're Gentiles, and the Sabbath ordinance was for the Israelite people to keep in perpetuity. Yeah, that's a good word. Anyways, what is the definitive text, though, that deals with the issue? Anybody know? Chris knows. He's not paying attention. Hebrews chapter 4 is the definitive text for Christians in relation to the Sabbath regulation, and I will enlighten you. Okay, so Hebrews chapter 4, 1 to 13 says this: Therefore, let us fear, while a promise remains of entering his rest, any of you may seem to have come short of it. For indeed, we have had good news preached to us, just as they also, but the word they received, it did not profit them, because it was not united by faith in those who heard. For we who have believed enter that rest, just as he said, as I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest, although his works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he has said somewhere concerning the seventh day, and God rested on the seventh day from all his work. So, this text is particularly talking about the fourth commandment. There is no ambiguity here. I want to emphasize that point. This is talking about the rest of God on the seventh day. And again, in this passage, they shall never enter my rest. So the writer of Hebrews is stating categorically that the Jews did not enter into the rest, the Sabbath rest. And those who live by faith do enter into that Sabbath rest. It talks specifically about the seventh day. But then the writer of Hebrews goes on to say, therefore, since it remains for some to enter it, that is the rest, and those who formerly had the good news preached them failed to enter because of disobedience, he again fixes a certain day, today, saying through David, after so long a time, just as has been said before, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. For if Joshua had given them rest, he would not have spoken of another day after that. So there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. So the Sabbath ordinance was a shadow pointing forward to the greater reality of Sabbath rest, which is what day of the week? Today. Whatever day today falls on, that's the day of our Sabbath rest. Now, the next question, of course, arises from that. Are we to do no regular work on the Sabbath day? Yeah. You're all free to do nothing for the rest of your life but worship God. So we'll meet here every day. Okay. Obviously not. We're talking about the difference between the temporal and the eternal here, and we're talking about what is the reality that goes beyond the shadow in application of Sabbath rest. Right. That we no longer what the Sabbath pointed forward to was that there was a rest for the people of God through faith in terms of achieving salvation. We have achieved salvation through observance of the law. Is that a correct statement? Yes, it is. Why is it a correct statement? Because Jesus kept the law perfectly. So we are saved through law observation. But not ours. His. Right? We have all sorts of weird stuff like that in Christianity. Yes, Gabe?
Would it be correct to say that it doesn't matter whether you go to church on Sunday or Saturday?
Oh, I love that question. Good question. Okay. Should we meet? Because I have some really good questions about this. For starters, the Sabbath regulation was instituted in 321. The Lord's Day application was instituted in 321 by Constantine. And he said, on the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and the people residing in the cities rest, and let all workshops be closed. In the country, however, persons engaged in agriculture may freely and lawfully continue in their pursuits, because it often happens that another day is not suitable for grain sowing or vine planting, lest by neglecting the proper moment for such operations, the bounty of heaven should be lost. Okay, so was Constantine wrong in instituting this Lord's Day application and institution, or was he correct, and why? What's that? Oh, it certainly did. It certainly made it political. So there's all sorts of implications here that are important for us to think about, because as I said the last time we went over this, I remember when everything shut down on Sundays. There was nothing open on Sundays. Was that a right thing or a wrong thing? I think it was a good thing. Okay, here's another thing. If we worship on the Lord's Day, but the Sabbath is every day, so the question is if Sunday is not the Sabbath, and so we do not observe it as the Christian Sabbath, then was Eric Liddell correct in what he did? Who's Eric Liddell?
He's the runner in the 1924 Olympics that refused to run on Sunday. Chariots of Fire was made after him.
Great movie. So was he right? He refused. He made a stand on Sabbath observance and refused to run in the Olympics on Sunday.
The only way that he'd be right is he has decided it was prompted by his faith, therefore anything that's not prompted by faith is sin. So it would be wrong for him to run because he has decided that it's wrong for him to run. But like I go to work this afternoon and it's not wrong for me to go to work this afternoon.
Are you sure?
I think that we should set aside a day to worship the Lord. And on that day, worship the Lord and do family things and things. If you have to go to work, you have to go to work. Nurses have to work.
No.
Doctors, a lot of people have to work on Sunday. But I think as Christians, we should set aside a day that we gather together. The scripture says, do not neglect gathering together. So we have to pick a day.
Is that just her opinion?
Like you can go to church on Saturday evening. You can go to church on Saturday evening and you just when it's convenient.
Eric Little would violate his conscience. That's
Because we've already said from Colossians and Romans that it's a matter of your conscience, right? So if you consider one day better than another, and then you violate your conscience by not observing that day, then that is a problem, isn't it? Because you violated your conscience. So, is Sunday the Christian Sabbath? No. What's that? For those who want it to be. Because there are Seventh-day Baptists. There are Baptists in the world that worship on Saturday instead of Sunday. Now, why do we worship on Sunday? It is an ancient tradition. Yeah, that is not a Bible quote. I'm just letting you know. He said tradition kills. And if that was true, then we'd all be dead. Because we all have traditions. We have lots of traditions. And traditions are good things. Because traditions, the heart of every issue is the issue of the heart. Traditions are good things because they provide us a framework, right? They become evil when they become idolatrous. But traditions are not a problem. One of the problems is when we make those traditions, we teach as doctrine, right? Or we teach as dogma. No, what's the quote? This is terrible. The teaching of men. Oh, somebody help me out. You guys know this. Yeah, it's a Bible. It is a Bible quote. Teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. That was what I was going for. It's a quote from Christ, and he's talking about hand washing, and the Jews had the tradition of hand washing, and they taught it as if it was a biblical mandate to wash your hands before eating, right? And so we have traditions that we observe which aren't wrong in and of themselves, but when we start to teach those, and this is what some of the European missionaries fell into. They started teaching these traditions as if they were scriptural doctrine. And they imposed them upon the people that they encountered. And do we do this? Let's think about dress and entertainment, food and drink, modes of worship. We have traditions that might be based on biblical principles, but are not themselves biblical principles. And so for us, to violate them would be violation of conscience, but they would not be for others. And so when we try and impose those on people, that becomes a problem. Dress is a good one because we talk about dress in times past. You wore your Sunday best, right? And so it became a thing in North America that there was a certain style of dress that was absolutely essential for coming to church in. And critics of Christianity would condemn Christians because they excluded people because they didn't dress right. Right? Now, there's obviously the opposite danger, but what is the mindset that came behind the requirement for Sunday best dress? Give your best to the Lord, right? You have reverence for worship, right? That was the understanding, is that you have a reverence when you come in, and that is a requirement, that you have proper reverence. In Hebrews, it states that that is how we are supposed to worship God, right? And so, when people come in and they don't have an attitude of worship, they don't care about worship, they don't care, or they dress defiantly. Go ahead, tell me what I'm wearing is wrong. I dare you. You Pharisee, you hypocrite. Come on, tell me what I'm wearing is wrong. And people come with that attitude. That is just as wrong as the attitude of coming to worship and seeing somebody come in jeans and a t-shirt, for instance, right? And saying, look at that person. They are dressed like a slob coming to church. Both of those things are equally wrong. Both of those things are a problem of the heart that don't demonstrate doing justly, loving mercy, and walking humbly with your God. And this is the problem. It is the attitude behind the traditions is essential, because an improper attitude behind the tradition is what is sin. Any questions? Any comments?
I do think it's dangerous to use the term Sabbath, Christian Sabbath, because truly for the Christian, the Sabbath is salvation. Right?
I would agree 100%.
I just think it's more, we should be more careful with our words.
Precision in language is important. That's why God was precise in his language with the word. Yes, if you read the Westminster Catechism and many of the other catechisms, they make a big deal about Christian Sabbath regulation and what Christians are supposed to worship like on the Sabbath. When we do the Westminster Shorter Catechism, we change it because it is not in accordance with biblical Christianity to say that Sunday is the Christian Sabbath. It cannot be applied and it cannot be justified. And it creates a problem for worship when you observe it like that. For starters, when you talk to Seventh-day Adventists, they don't observe the Sabbath according to Old Testament regulations. And they have all sorts of problems anyway, right? Because of the teachings of Ellen G. White, which was their prophetess, they have all sorts of regulations about diet and all sorts of other things that are twists on Old Testament principles and laws. And so they have perverted that and tried to impose it on other believers. and that's a real problem. Okay, so yeah, I would agree that Christian Sabbath is a bad term. Do I think that it's good to worship on Sunday? Yeah, I think we have a long tradition based on scriptural passages about meeting on the first day of the week. And John said in Revelation, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, meaning the first day of the week, meaning Sunday. And so there is a long history. Constantine just didn't come up with that. Constantine didn't come up with that on his own. It was already a well-established Christian principle that he made law, which of course begs the question, is it okay for the civil authorities to impose biblical principles on their subjects?
I mean, there has to be.
I love this question because
Because you shall not kill. I mean, if there wasn't a biblical principle, then you could kill anyone.
Depends on whether it's moral law or civil law.
it's a difficult question, and this is why. A lot of secularists will say you can't legislate morality. They love to say that, and then they go right ahead and legislate morality. They just mean you can't legislate Christian morality. Right? But in every society, there is an underlying law perspective, of an underlying worldview that you base all of your legislation on. And this is where we are in North America. We're having a big problem because is that a Muslim worldview? Do you want to have laws based on Islam? Is it a Hindu worldview that your laws are based on? Because all of these things affect the laws that you institute. Everything from property rights, right, to whether you murder unborn children, everything is based on a worldview. And so when you are instituting laws, is it a Judeo-Christian ethic that you're basing your laws on? And let's be clear, all laws are legislating morality, right? On some level. And so it's important for us to realize when we're condemned for trying to promote Christian values, we really have to give that some wisdom. We are to have regard for what is right in the sight of all people, because the moral law is written where? On the hearts, right? Unbelievers and believers alike have the imago Dei, whether it's the regenerated of the Christian or whether it's the corrupted of the unbeliever, but it's still there, right? And so the law is written on the hearts of people. And so it's important for us to have wisdom and not be run roughshod over by secularists who would tell us you can't legislate morality. Okay, we're done.